The newest 2.2 update has a few important things that need to be addressed when it comes to wishing, and these are the 5 considerations you don't want to miss out on. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Final Gear, a new mech-style RPG that features thrilling side-scrolling action and a gripping storyline that's set in an apocalyptic world. Fight your way through various missions on a tactical map to gather tons of different components and use them to assemble your ultimate mech suit. The combinations are pretty much endless, and you'll be busy fine-tuning your destructive power. But what's a mech suit without its pilot? The game features over 100 different and adorable characters you can collect with their very own unique personalities and abilities that all come packaged together with a top-of-the-line voice acting and enjoyable interactions. You also get to command the base with a dorm system, so you can build a mech empire with passive resource income and hang out with your favorite pilots daily. And there's no better time than to start playing now, since the game just released and you can use this special gift code to get a lot of rewards, but most important of all, you'll help support the channel if you download the game now, so make sure to use the link in the description or pinned comment and check out Final Gear today. It's been a long time since we've seen this Trickster's banner, and Hu Tao is finally coming in the newest 2.2 update. Now, there's a lot of things we need to unpack here, because 1.3 update happened ages ago, and there's been a lot of changes since then. First, let's address the most obvious factor here, Thoma. While you can hear more about him later in the video, pairing him together with Hu Tao on the same banner is quite the powerful combo to say the least, since not only are there many fans out there who adore Hu Tao's design and playstyle, but there's also the excitement of a new 4-star character, so the choice of picking which banner to wish on is kind of predetermined. But if you're someone who has been playing the game for a long time, then you already know that Pyro is basically the most common element you'll encounter in team building, since you can easily unlock Xiangling for free, and Bennett is the pillar of nearly any team comp, while the rest of Pyro characters offer their own unique playstyle. In fact, after Hu Tao's release, we've seen Yanfei and Yoimiya come out, both of which act as your main damage dealer, not to mention Diluc still gets a lot of usage just because he was built during those early launch days, and while a common misconception is that Hu Tao can replace Diluc, he actually offers his own advantages like better stagger, cheap burst, and easy pyro application. Also, let's not forget the craze during 1.3 when weapon banner sales went through the roof thanks to Staff of Homa, otherwise known as Staff of Homeless, and now that MiHoYo have implemented another very questionable tactic of weapon pity, if this staff comes out together with Hu Tao, well, it will be interesting to see how many Primo Gems will fly out of people's wallets. Still, if you do decide to go for Hu Tao, don't feel pressure to get the staff, even if it is powerful, because, first of all, the only place where the damage matters is the Spiral Abyss, and you can still easily use strong alternatives like Deathmatch, Dragon's Bane, and Blacklift Pole. The other important factor is her first constellation, since her charged attacks work really well for elemental reactions thanks to a thing called internal cooldown. You'll be running out of stamina fast, so having that upgrade is a huge difference, and if you're someone who owns and actively uses Hu Tao till this day, going for this constellation might not be such a bad idea, assuming you care about optimizing her performance. It's not cool that MiHoYo put this strong constellation as the next upgrade, but it is what it is. Overall, it all comes down to personal preference, and even at 0 constellations and a free-to-play weapon like Blacklift Pole, Hu Tao is still a force to be reckoned with. If there's one character that suffered a lot from misconceptions, then it would be Childe. The early days of hypercarry concept damaged the perception of Childe, and common criticisms like his elemental skill downtime and the importance of constellations weren't actually that big of a deal. In fact, as we keep growing together as a community, our mindset has shifted to use quick swap team comps, which is basically a simplified word for having 4 characters fully built that you can interchange quickly and unload their abilities. And while the whole hypercarry thing is still relevant for newer players who care about clearing the abyss as soon as possible, but after you're done building that one strong character, as you keep playing more and more, so will your teams continue improving. In fact, this is why today we have the extremely powerful international team that's basically driven by the duo of Xiangling and Childe, because when previously his skill cooldown was a burden, now it's basically dismissed because you're busy doing the rest of the rotation with remaining 3 characters before switching back to him and activating the skill again. And as for the constellations, well, they don't offer drastic damage improvements, so good news are, at C0 you can build the beastly Childe with no problems. The only thing that remains relevant to this day is that he is a technical character, which requires a bit of thinking when you use him, as well as learning some optimal attack patterns, but for those who enjoy this kind of a learning curve, will definitely get a rewarding experience out of it. So in other words, even if Childe is having his 3rd rerun, if you're still in need of a strong Hydro sub damage dealer, and you like the idea idea of a complete package at 0 constellations, not to mention several teams that will push him to his performance limits, he might just be worth wishing for in this next upcoming banner. This time around, the weight of carrying Genshin's 2.2 update falls onto Thoma's shoulders, well, at least in terms of newfound character excitement. Now surprisingly enough, a lot of information was given away by the voice actors during the livestream, so besides knowing the actual damage multipliers and few other caveats, it's pretty clear how Thoma will work. And the main mechanic he will employ will be Blazing Barriers, which is just a fancy way of calling the pyro shield he produces, although there are multiple factors that depend on this unique shield. First of all, this Blazing Barrier shield can stack several times, which increases the amount of damage you can absorb with it, but the interesting part is that this elemental skill will only produce it once, since the actual stacking happens through his elemental burst, because while it's active, any character who attacks will deal pyro AoE damage and create a new Blazing Barrier. Think of it like this: the more you attack while the burst is active, the more shields you're going to stack together. Still, the voice actors did mention there is a limit to how many shields you can stack, but in all honesty, if we think of a scenario how Thoma would be used in a team comp, then you'd probably go for his skill, then burst, and then switch to anyone who deals different element damage like Hydro or Electro, although if his damage multipliers prove to be capable enough, he might even be the one using the burst to produce elemental reactions. However, the biggest concern here has to be the burst's functionality, since from the way it was described, it looks like it's going to work in a similar manner when compared to Beto's or Xingqiu's burst, but as we had to learn the hard way, there is a pretty huge difference between the two when it comes to triggering their attacks, with the recent fiasco we've had during Raiden Shogun's release. So let's just hope Thoma's burst is developed the same way as Xingqiu's, and anyone who has Raiden can use them together with no problem. But let's talk about something else that's pretty important to consider. During the livestream, it was mentioned that one of his passive talents will increase the damage of those AoE pyro attacks coming from the burst by a certain amount of Thoma's maximum health. This is a pretty important thing to consider because there is a possibility his actual skill or burst might scale with his maximum health, although judging from the past and the way MiHoYo designs shields, it's more than likely health will only be relevant for shield absorption, while the actual damage multipliers will probably depend on the usual attack and critical stats. Obviously, the reason why this even gets brought up is that this passive could be drastic enough that you would want to have health artifacts on Thoma, since we do have an example of Zhongli who has multiple builds, few of which that greatly benefit from using health stat thanks to his passive, but the point is, there's a chance that Thoma might be able to have more than just a traditional damage support build because of this passive, as well as the fact if MiHoYo decides to make his Blazing Barrier shield scale with health. Also, there's another passive that will increase active characters' shield strength by a certain amount when they gain a Blazing Barrier, but it's not something that you will pay attention to because it will happen naturally, and you can think of it like having a built-in 2-sit Retracing Bolide, but probably a weaker version. Finally, for those of you who lack the motivation to go fishing, well, Thoma has a solution because his passive effect will give you 20% chance to catch double the amount. It's no secret how painful it can get when trying to find those buffers and kois for that fully refined catch pole arm, so Thoma might just be someone you can count on to complete this exhausting journey. Overall, everything we've learned about this guy so far seems very exciting because not only are shields extremely relevant in Spiral Abyss, but the way his playstyle works sounds like it takes zero effort to pull off a nice quick swap combo of activating his skill and burst, and then having the freedom to use those special AoE pyro attacks combined with any other teammate. The biggest selling point, honestly, has to be the burst, because not only will you benefit from extra attacks and elemental reactions, but you'll also passively gain shields that you can even stack together for more damage absorption, and who knows, he might just be the next alternative to Zhongli. When it comes down to which banner to go for, the answer is going to be extremely subjective because everyone plays the game their own way and have different characters and equipment. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't some benefits when comparing the two banners. For example, there is a huge contrast between Hydro and Pyro that mainly has to do with the character pool, since not only do we get a strong Pyro damage dealer like Xiangling for free, but there's also Bennett, Diluc, Yanfei, and many others that can help you fill that Pyro gap, while on Hydro's side, everyone's basically when testing for Xingqiu, and with the recent Kokomi's revenue report we've seen, it's pretty clear not many players decided to get her, so there's still a huge shortage of Hydro characters available. So in addition to this, what's also great about Childe is that his constellations, as mentioned previously, aren't necessary to fully utilize him, and while he does have a learning curve, he offers a rewarding playstyle at 0 constellations, and since all of us already have Xiangling, their duo can be used to clear the hardest content in Genshin, or at least one side of the room. On the other hand, there is that irresistible temptation to go for Hu Tao's banner, since not only is she very popular in the community, but her banner is also where Thoma resides, so it's basically a win-win situation for those who want these two characters, and even the initial community polls shows this exact mindset. The only annoying thing about Hu Tao is her first constellation because of how powerful it is, and while at C0 she's awesome, there is a power gap between the two, and it's not even the damage itself but her playstyle, because triggering those elemental reactions with her charge attack is kind of what you want to be doing all the time, even if you can easily resort to normal hits. So if you're someone who owns her already and still need that constellation and you have been using her actively, then this upgrade is definitely worth going for. It's actually fascinating how the conversation about 5-star constellations will keep changing as time moves on, especially for veteran players, since realistically speaking, most of us get a 5-star at 0 constellations if we're lucky and then call it a day, but now that reruns are getting more common, maybe it is time we start considering these upgrades. It's kind of interesting. Quite a few people feel like this upcoming update feels like a filler, even if we're getting a new island to explore and a new character, but maybe the lack of new 5-stars or continuation to the main storyline can feel like a letdown. Speaking of which, since both of these banners besides Thoma feature a returning 5-star, it's important to remember there are still a few cast members left from Inazuma who haven't debuted yet, like Yayumiko and Goro, not to mention the fact there's always some new character lurking that MiHoYo doesn't add into the main story until the very last second, so if you like the idea of unknown, then holding back on these two banners might be a sound plan. Still, it's hard to ignore the growing pool of characters, and we can already see examples like a huge demand for Ganyu's rerun, not to mention others like Albedo, Eula, and Kazuha will need to show up eventually, but because of the weird way MiHoYo decides to plan out these limited banners, it's possible some of these characters might not show up for a long time, while others like Childe could keep reappearing. So if you have someone you like in particular, saving up is always an option, but sometimes this can take a lot of months before we even get any news. Otherwise, you should know the rules by now. If you're unsure what to do and have no problem skipping Childe's banner, just wait until the very last week of Hu Tao's banner to watch the next livestream to learn about the next upcoming banners. Hope you enjoyed the video. There's definitely quite a few sneaky things you have to consider when it comes to wishing in 2.2 Genshin, which can get even harder when it comes to picking which banner to go for, unless of course you're a whale or someone who owns these characters already besides Thoma, then you probably already know what to do. But if you haven't done already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and gently press the like button. Thanks for watching and see you next time.